Gotta stop making me laugh before we go live. It just kills the vibe over here.
Well, that's the goal to get you all laughing and excited for the 30 minutes we get to spend together every week.
Yeah. If only people could hear our pre-show and just the conversations we have, they'd be laughing along with us.
Yeah, you always have those bloopers and outtakes. Too bad we can't record all of that. Then we would just put a whole 30-minute segment together.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Well, I want to welcome all of you who are with us live and those on replay. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here talking about retirement, specifically retirement risk. I want to make sure that's put out there so that you know exactly what we talk about here. And I want to encourage you to submit your questions. So if you have questions that deal with retirement, and we have every topic under the sun, go ahead and put it in our comments if you are here live on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll do our best to get those questions answered. And if you're not brave enough to go ahead and submit your question here, you can always do it on our website at retirementriskadvisors.com. There's a little contact us tab, and you can fill in the details there, and we'll get those on future shows. But Dave, welcome to the show today.
Whew, glad to be here. Always exciting to be back talking to people about the retirement, trying to help them get answers to their questions.
Dave, we've done this for a long time, and we've done, I mean, thousands and thousands of questions. What do you see that's common through all these questions that you just keep repeating when we come on and do these shows, or when you're on webinars or even podcasts?
Yeah, Social Security is always a big topic because it does affect everyone. When you look at retirement tools, strategies, things that exist out there that may affect everyone, you got Social Security, that's a big one. And long term care, when we ask questions about the biggest concern people have with the retirement, finding that long term care is something that's really creeping in and becoming an issue, and people want to better understand what that's going to look like.
And do you see a lot of people taking action with long-term care?
Unfortunately, no. There are those that are saying, look, I realize I've got to do something. Problem, they get overwhelmed. All of a sudden, you're sitting here looking at the cost of long-term care insurance. You're looking at what it's going to take to put a plan in place, and then realize too, with many of those products, that the cost of that's going to go up every year, maybe on you. And so you're thinking, okay, I can afford $4,000 a year now, but what happens when it becomes 4,500 or 5,000 or 7,000, whatever the case may be? So a lot of times people just aren't putting in the time they need to really figure it out, or to look at other options like life insurance that have become very popular. And on that end, yes, we do see far more people using that as an alternative now because it's working so much better.
And Dave, I'm glad you brought that up, and also Social Security. That's another thing. And in fact, I've got a question I'm going to start with on Social Security, because that's another hot topic, like you said, that people are always asking about. And are they asking these questions because they're confused, or because they're just trying to rely on Social Security alone? Where do you see the benefit of that?
So I think there's a number of things going on there. Number one is it is a very confusing, product when you look at what it offers and the benefits, and you look at spousal and survivor and who can get benefits off of your work record. That becomes very confusing. But I think all in all, a lot of them are just hoping, hey, maybe there's a secret out there that I can get some free money that I didn't know about, rather than putting in the time, the effort to say, look, you know what, the rules are the rules. And the way you get extra money from Social Security is being patient and waiting longer to get those benefits. We're just seeing more and more people that are saying, I want to quit working. I want to get all the money I can from the government and never have to do anything again. That's like, that wasn't what Social Security was designed for. And if we get in a world where that's what we think it is, that program, it's going to go broke. We mentioned it's going broke, but what never will go broke. Well, if we get to a point that all America wants to do is hang out and live off the government, we got some far bigger issues there.
So we can make a show that's a secret retirement show where we can get all those insiders from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll just bring those out, tell you what you got to do, tax things you can do. And, no, we really want to make sure. And again, we realize everyone's situation is different. We realize that Social Security is something you paid into, that you have rights to. But again, understand that it's there to help us supplement our retirement income and get us where we need to be, not to be our sole source of retirement income.
Well, Dave, I'm glad you bring that up, because again, I'm going to start with my first question here. And this is from Craig. If I delay my Social Security benefits, don't I still receive the same amount I would have if taken at full retirement age?
Craig, thank you for asking this question, because if there are others out there that have this misunderstanding, it's very important to me that we get it cleared up. No, you get more money. So understand, this is one of the benefits and why we want to wait. Depending on when you claim your benefits, whether it be 62 or 70 or somewhere in between, you're going to get a different amount of money. And the earlier you claim, the lower amount of money you're going to get. The longer you wait, the more you're going to get up until age 70.
Dave, do you ever see any benefit going beyond 70?
No, the only benefit you get obviously is the annual increase, the COLA increase, or the inflation adjustment that happens each year. But no, you don't want to wait until after age 70 and think I'm going to get these delayed retirement credits that I got from full retirement age to 70. They will end, and you're going to miss out on money, because you'll have a year of earnings that you could have gotten, or benefits that for many people, the average person gets $1,600 a month, CR. So if you take that, I mean, you're talking over $18,000 a year that you just missed out on, even if you're the average person, that you're not going to get back.
And Dave, you talked about it earlier that not everybody's retirement is going to be the exact same. So what if I'm in my 60s, let's say I'm 63, 64, and I'm looking at this and I need cash now. And that's something because I just haven't planned, and I take it out then. I mean, that obviously changes versus somebody saying, hey, wait till 70. What advice can we give to those?
I think it depends on, why do you need the cash? Do you need the cash because you got medical issues and you just can't work? Maybe you're in a situation where you can't go out and work, or you like both of my sisters right now. Hate to pick on my own family. Again, dealing with some of the same struggles that you guys deal with, both very capable of going to work, but refusing to do so. So they're saying, hey, how do I get this free money from the government? And why can't it come earlier than it already is? And how come it's not more, when they are very capable of going and getting jobs and they just refuse to do it? Again, I'm sorry, even for my own family, that's not the right answer to be a responsible citizen in this country.
And Dave, I like that you bring that up, because a lot of times we sit back and we wait to say, hey, I've earned my Social Security, I'm ready to take it now, and that's it. But I like what you're talking about, because we still have opportunities to get out there and work. I mean, physically, hopefully we are. And like you're talking about with the situations in your family, they're still capable of getting out there and doing something. And I don't want people to feel like this is a free ride. There's everything we're doing here is to help people, but they have to take action through the course of this.
And it's only going to get worse, CR. I mean, again, you look at it, I've got one sister, and not trying to give too much information here, but she's in a situation. She called me the other day. It wasn't even halfway through the month. She says, look, I got $6 left on my Social Security. That's all I got left to get me through. Now I've got a full tank of gas. I've got food to be able to eat through that period of time. But I'm going, wait a second, here you're sitting at age 65, very capable of going out to work. And you're in this situation, you got $6 left halfway through the month, and you're okay with that, realizing that it's 75 and 85 with inflation and everything goes on, that it's only going to get worse. I just don't get it, honestly, when I look out there and say, this is not your solution, folks. We got to be willing to put in the effort and the time. And I know that from a standard side of retirement, we get to our mid 60s and think, oh, we should be done. But we got another potential 20, 25, 30 years, maybe even more out there that we're going to live, that are going to be very tough times if you're thinking Social Security is going to cover all of that.
Dave, let me just throw something in there. I'm in my 60s. Nobody's going to hire me.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, again, you look at it, it's going to be harder. And I do get that, especially from many professionals that are trying to get licensed jobs that they had before. But again, you've got my buddy Mike down here at Kroger. Again, he's struggling. He hates his job. It's a miserable experience some days to even just have a conversation with him. But yet he's out there working, and Kroger saying, hey, we'll give him the opportunity. Now, what's he making to do his job? $10 or $15 an hour, somewhere in there, probably, maybe closer to 10. But add that up, CR. I mean, if you're a retiree and you're out there working even 20 hours a week, you get another $800 a month. Again, take someone like my sister, that $800 a month goes a whole long ways of trying to pay for car repairs or increases in rent or other things she's going to have over time that she's just unwilling to deal with right now.
And again, this is real talk in retirement. This isn't to come out here and just tell you that everything's going to be great. You're talking about retirement. We have 10, 20, 30 years more of life left, and we're not sitting back here just hoping that that's going to be a perfect opportunity. We have to make sure we're ready for it.
No, and it's really our job to tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Again, even with my sisters, we're always telling, look, you got to go get jobs. Yeah, this is the thing I don't understand. It happens in family. And again, I'm very responsible. I've got 8 children, want to make sure they're taken care of. But don't think that I should go to work every day because you're not willing to go to work every day. Again, I just don't get it. It wasn't the way I was raised. It's raised that we all have to have that responsibility. And so again, as we look at it, what can we structure? And one of the best things anyone can do for the retirement is work longer if you can. Now, yeah, I'm not saying you should have to put in 60-hour days as a tax accountant and go through miserable tax seasons. But again, if you can do 20-hour weeks, help pass some of the time, still have time to go shopping or golf or do all the things you want to do, knit, crochet, whatever it might be, then you have the freedom to do that. But it can add so much stability to future retirement and help build up some savings for those people that don't currently have it.
Very well said, Dave. And I don't want to keep harping on this, but again, we are here to talk about retirement and go through some of these topics and really get down and gritty with some of these and get through the details here. So I appreciate all the conversations with this, Dave.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get into another question we have. But before I do, if you are here live, go ahead and submit your questions again through Facebook or YouTube, and we'll do our best to squeeze those in between all these questions. And all these questions are coming from people just like you. They're getting on our Facebook page or getting on our Instagram page, our website. They're sending emails, and we get all these topics. We put them on the site here, and we have the show. Okay, Dave, we went through Social Security. We talked a little bit about long-term care just in the beginning, but let's talk about reverse mortgage. This is another one I have a lot of questions about when I meet people and tell them what we do. But Bonnie's asking, when is a reverse mortgage an ideal retirement strategy?
Bonnie, good question. Now, I'm going to answer it in some various phases here because, again, it's going to be different for every individual. Areas that I could see the use of a reverse mortgage being a great thing for someone's retirement. Number one, you're in a situation where, again, maybe you're just living off Social Security and you don't have enough income to really get you through every month, but yet you've got a home with value that really is providing you no benefit. If you're just going to continue to live in there and not have a reverse mortgage on the property, and then you're going to be transferring the asset to a beneficiary, someone at the end of your lifetime, well, that's horrible use of that asset to be able to help you get through some years where you're struggling. Number two is if you're in a situation where you have no one to give your assets to. Now, again, I got 8 kids, and if I didn't have 2 disabled ones, I don't have anyone to give it to because I ain't giving it to my other 6 kids. That's not my job. I educated them. Their job to figure out how to get the assets they need to get through the rest of their lifetime. So again, if you're in a position of saying, hey, I want that or need that money to be able to spend it, you could do that. Another one we see that you've got to be a little careful with, but can work, is if you're having a long-term care event. It can be another way to get some money there to allow you to have more freedom on what happens and maybe be able to stay in your home to get the treatment versus having to go outside of the house.
So, Dave, you talked about if we were to leave something behind for our kids or spouse or partner or roommate, whatever it is. But let's talk about if we want to move. Is it a good idea if we're looking to move and at the same time trying to get a reverse mortgage?
So no. So I mean, one of the things you've got to understand with a reverse mortgage is they're fairly expensive. Now, again, why are they expensive? They provide some benefits you can't get anywhere else. Where else you're going to be able to get a loan that's going to give you monthly income that you're not going to have to pay back until you sell the property or end up passing away, and then your family or beneficiaries end up dealing with that. So it may cost $10,000 to $20,000 to put it in place. So if you're not expecting to stay in your home for a long period of time, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go put a reverse mortgage on there, use it for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, sell the property, have to pay all that off, and then get a new property and say, maybe I'm going to go get me a new reverse mortgage. And if you do, have to pay that additional $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. So we've got to be smart about the way we do it. But many retirees, and I would say most of them, last thing they want to do is move in retirement. They want to stay inside of that house. So they're saying, hey, I'll be here until I pass on or until I'm in a position that I can no longer live here because it doesn't allow me to function the way I need to. Maybe you got a 2-story home and you end up in a wheelchair and it doesn't have wide enough doors or showers or those type of things. But most people are very happy to stay in those homes until they pass away.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of modification has to be done for those that, like you said, Dave, if they're a 2-story home, if they have doors that aren't wide enough. I know that you've talked several times on the show, all the things you're adjusting at your home in order to make it work for your family. And I think it's something we have to always look at as well.
Yeah, and if you came into my home right now, it's a very beautiful home, but I will tell you, we've done some things that we wouldn't have expected to do. Our master closet now is a bedroom. It was a very large master closet, small bedroom for one of our daughters who ends up being in a enclosed bed because if not, she'd run through the house all night long, and who knows what she'd get into. So for her safety, she's in there, but it works. We took our main family room that we never used, or our formal living room, I guess is what you would call it. We never use that. We're not that formal. We love spending time together. That's now our son's room. So he's inside of there. And we were able to put some glass doors in there to provide the privacy. It looks nice. But again, they were changes. We have a wheelchair ramp. We just had to buy a brand new van to facilitate all these things. And I'll tell you, folks, these are not cheap things. If you're going to go through this later in your life, understand, even right now, to go get a wheelchair van, CR, I mean, this is something that's hard to believe when you look at it. I mean, if you're getting a newer model, and when I'm saying newer model, you're probably talking 2017, 2018 with a reasonable amount of miles. We're talking $50,000 to $60,000 just for something of that nature. Well, if you're used to driving an old car that cost you $15,000 or $20,000, and you're thinking, hey, that was perfect. Now I got a wheelchair. I've got to have something else to facilitate this. And we're not just talking a few $1,000s, and there's not a lot of organizations out there to help us with these things. So another thing we've got to look at, ramps coming into the house. We did our own, cost us a couple of $1,000s to put them in, put everything up. But again, these renovations, as you're talking about, we had to change our showers. I mean, we've spent thousands and thousands of dollars to make this possible for these two amazing kids we have. But many people are going to go through that in their retirement. They're going to be shocked to find out how expensive it really is.
Yeah. And then if we even get into long-term care, Dave, on top of all of this, it's a whole different conversation as well.
Yeah. We just don't realize what effect changes in our health have. The other day when we were in Houston, we were driving by an individual, and I felt sorry for him. He's an individual had been hit in a car wreck, wasn't his fault. Finally getting back to where he could drive, but he was in a wheelchair trying to, him and his girlfriend, wife are out there trying to figure out how to get him into the front seat so he could drive. Very different. We drive by in the nice van with the lift. He's sitting there going, "Oh, it'd be so nice to have that." But again, who's going to be able to spend that money on average to be able to buy something like that if you're on a fixed income? And he was in a situation to say, "Hey, it's super tough. It's very hard. It takes me a long time to get in and out of the car, but it's what I got to do because I got to go to work and do the things I need to do to try to make money for my family."
Yeah, Dave, definitely very well said. And I appreciate you getting personal with us and sharing some of those stories, because we want people to know that this is something that not only we talk about, we do, but we want to let people know that everyone's in a different situation. We're all starting from different areas, but we all have the same goal, and that's to retire and make sure that we have enough funds and assets to make sure it's comfortable for us.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave, let's get to my next question I have here from Sawyer. Is there risk in traveling abroad during retirement?
Yes, there is. And the big risk is something happens medically. Now, there's two sides of this. This unfortunately today it seems like we've got a lot of negative stuff coming out as we look at the topics. And please know I'm not trying to do that. I'm very optimistic about life. I'm optimistic about retirement and where we're heading. But unfortunately, as risk advisors, you do see a number of bad things that can happen. One could be from a level of care. There's a risk out there that you end up in an area where they don't offer the care. I had that happen with a client. He was a doctor. His wife got sick. Had he been in the US, easily taken care of the issue she had. Unfortunately, we're in a country where they didn't have the medical resources that we have here, and there was nothing he could do. She ended up passing away because of the illness. So you got that issue, but also from a cost issue that depending on what happens from a medical side and what insurance coverage you may have. Now, there are policies out there that can help you cover your medical issues if you're abroad, but you may be in a situation where you could have a lot of out-of-pocket costs, may not be able to get treatment if you can't pay for it up front, depending on what country you're in and how they handle their medicine, but definitely can come with a lot of issues.
Dave, on one of your podcasts, one of your guests came on and talked about her and her husband that traveled abroad for a year, went over to Italy and wrote a book about it, and really talked about the good and the bad, but talked about the travel experience, the medical, everything with that, and how much fun they had. So again, as you talk about this, there's so many things, good and bad, to look at. but I appreciate what you're bringing up, because this isn't all about the negative aspect of retirement. It's about, hey, making sure we're aware of these things as we're getting into retirement.
And my side, and you're exactly right, CR. Our side isn't by any means saying, hey, stop enjoying your retirement. What we want you to do is deal with the risk so you know what's going on so you can enjoy it more. Again, if you're going abroad, you know that there's a risk of having a health problem, but yet you sign up for insurance and you're covered. Hey, it's a whole different experience. I know there's been times on my side, again, when you're traveling with so many kids, there's times you choose not to buy certain things, whether it be insurance there, whether you're renting a car and having insurance. The times you choose not to do that, a little bit different experience, because you're going through the day. It's like, oh man, what if this happens? It's going to be a problem. Or if you're driving a car and almost have an accident, and you're thinking, wait, I didn't get the insurance I should have. And now what kind of problems are you going to be in because I didn't do that? Well, if we prepare ourselves, and again, not saying we have to spend the money for all of these things, but if we know what the risks are, we address them, we prepare ourselves, we can have a much better time, because if something happens, we know that, hey, we're covered. We're going to be okay. We've got a situation where we can solve it here.
And Dave, traveling is one thing, but what about moving abroad? Let's say we want to say in retirement, it's like Costa Rica. I hear all these amazing stories, or places in Mexico. And if that's where I decide, like, I want to be there when I retire, what things do I need to look at for that?
Yeah, far easier now to do it than it used to be. And we're seeing more and more people do it because of the cost of living. I know I was talking to one of my good friends. He's from Greece. He was back there and he says, Dave, I can still buy stuff here for nothing. I mean, they get this beautiful villa on the beach and he pays less than he would pay in his monthly mortgage for his home in the States, which he's got a nice home. He's like, look, we're living here for 60 days, staying in this beautiful villa. It's costing us less money than we would have ever paid for our home back in the States. And then all the food's less and all these things. So I get why people are doing it. Biggest thing you need to understand, number one, healthcare. Two, how your Social Security works, which anymore are pretty much going to be able to be paid unless you're in North Korea or maybe Russia. And then you need to look at just cost of living and how you're going to deal with the various impacts of that, what that's going to look like for you, and visas and passports and those types of things, to make sure you don't run afoul with one of those.
So, Dave, what you're saying is, if this is something that we're looking at, we're either going to travel, we're going to move, just making sure we're planning ahead and doing these things that we typically don't do unless it's a quick vacation. We plan quite a bit, but for anything else, we're just not planning like we should.
Yeah, and there's nothing like talking to someone that's gone through it either. I will tell you that I know, like when I lived in Puerto Rico, I didn't do this initially. There are a lot of things that we went into pretty naively that we probably should have known before we got there. But there's a lot of chat groups on Facebook and other social media platforms that if you're looking at getting into retirement and wanting to move somewhere, where you can learn a lot about what's going on and the things you should worry about. Or maybe, again, I had many people connect with me while I was there. I was the president of the private school that my kids went to, and they would reach out to me and say, hey, can I talk to you about the school system and what's going on and what I should do with my kids? More than happy to give someone an hour of my time to help them better understand what they should be doing from a choice decision before they end up bringing their family there and wish they hadn't of because they didn't understand something.
Yeah, and you did a great job. I was able to spend time with you down there, and you really changed that island down there. I love that.
Very, very great time in my life. Amazing people. Can't wait till I can get back there again. It's been way too long.
Yeah. Well, Dave, let's keep going. We've got about 8 minutes or so here. Let's get Cody's question. So Cody is a CPA. Would you recommend using the safe withdrawal rate method instead of the 4% rule to determine how much to withdraw from retirement funds?
Yeah, what I would recommend, Cody, is really neither of these. Now, again, if we're looking at safe withdrawal rate method, we're saying, hey, more of a 2.5%, 3%, 4% has been something that's been used. What you really want is a plan put together that tells you what you should be doing for you. Now, again, depending on your assets, your income needs, those type of things. And if you got $50 million and you're living off $100,000 a year, again, you can take all the money you want. 4% is going to be way more than you need. And in reality, there'd be years you can take way more than that out of there because you've got so much money, it's not going to go away. But it's really more about getting your planning in place so you can see what the right distribution rate is for you. We give guidelines all the time. But again, remember guidelines, averages. The only people they work for is that family that's got 2.2 kids. Anybody else, these averages just aren't going to work for out there. And obviously, we don't know any families that have 2.2 kids either. So just got to be very careful of using these when it comes down to our own specifics and what we should do.
So Dave, in this one, you touch about planning as well. So how do we make sure we get into the right plan as we get started with this?
The key is risk based. Again, very easy to go out there and find a financial advisor that's going to take average rates of return, going to take average inflation rates, find out what you need to live off during your retirement years, and then run some mathematical calculations to say, yeah, you need to have $3 million or $500,000 when you get to retirement, and you can take this amount out, and everything's going to be wonderful. You're going to die at 95 and still have $100,000 left to give to your beneficiaries or whatever. What we're finding is that's just not reality, that far too many people are doing the sit it and forget it plan with a traditional advisor, not even addressing the risk. Again, one of the things they're forgetting is, look, we're leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table by making bad decisions and bad choices that we don't have to. We talked about the other day, CR, on Social Security. 96% of people screw up their Social Security. Hard to believe that again, something that's so critical to your retirement, average person's leaving $111,000 on the table at the government. But again, you piled that up and you said $100,000 and said, hey, are you willing to walk away from this? There's not a soul that would do that. But yet, because they aren't seeing the impact, I mean, that's an average of $5,000-6,000 a year, another $500 a month that you're walking away from because you aren't getting educated the way you need to do it. And this can go across taxes on Social Security, can go across long-term care, talk about inflation, all these things that we're just leaving money out there. And that's why so many people are running out of money before they pass away.
And that's why we're here, to make sure that they get the right advice, and they're willing to take action. They're willing to put a risk-based plan together. All of these pieces are here, Dave, to provide answers, because so many people are coming and saying, I don't know what to do. What do I do next? And I think what you're saying is really helping those people that are saying, I'm stuck.
Yeah, I think back many times in my life, and it probably happens to every guy in the world out there. But again, you're out there and you're traveling, and you think you're going the right direction. You're sure you're doing the right thing, and your wife's over there like, honey, you think maybe you could stop and ask somebody about where we're going? Things aren't looking the way that I think they should. Oh, no, I'm good. I know exactly where we're going. And an hour later, you find out that, no, I wasn't so good. I'm in the wrong place. Well, how hard was it to stop and ask somebody? I let my own pride get in the way instead of taking 2 minutes and stopping and asking someone some directions and feel like that my wife was giving me the right information. Same thing with our retirement. We sit here and think, oh, we're going to be fine. What do I have to worry about? And then we wake up 20 years later and there's not a thing we can do about it. Again, you're sitting there and it's like, I'm too late to be able to make the adjustments I need to get where I should be. What do I do at that point? And so it just seems crazy to me. Someone would not take the time and the resource to get them a roadmap to say, look, let me give some comfort to myself on where I'm heading. Let me see where things are really looking, and then get ourselves to a point that we can hopefully have more success in getting through those 20, 30, or 40 years of retirement.
Now, Dave, I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing because I've never told my wife we're going the wrong direction. I just know. I never got off course.
Yeah, never happens. It's like, oh, this is where I meant to go. Yeah, I know it's San Diego and not San Francisco, but I thought that was where we were supposed to be today.
She's not here, so I can say that, because if she was here, it'd be a different story.
Yeah, all too many times we just do not take the time we should to solve our future issues.
I definitely agree. Well, Dave, we've just got a few more minutes, so I want to put one more question at you. I've been itching to get this one to you, because Henry's asking, what is semi-retirement and how would it impact my retirement planning?
Yeah, what I would call semi-retirement. Now, others may have different definitions for this, but where you're still working part-time, but do have the freedom to do the things that you want to do. Again, it's not a 40-hour week. Maybe it's a 20-hour week. Maybe it's a 10-hour week or a 30-hour week, depending on what you're used to previously. But it's allowing you to dip your toe into retirement, but still keep your foot into the working environment. There's a lot of emotional and psychological benefits to this. We find far too many people that retire and then they don't have enough to do, sit around watching TV, not taking care of themselves. All of a sudden the health goes, and before you know it, they passed away way earlier than they should. We also have too many people that stay in the workplace and think, oh, retirement's not going to be for me. I just got to keep working. And then they finally get there. They finally quit at age 85 and they go, boy, if I'd known that I could have done this, I would have stopped at 65. So it just gives people a good transition to say, okay, I'm not going to have a gap in my work history. So hopefully if I do decide to go back to work more, I need to do something else, I can go back and do it, but I can provide some income for myself during this period of time. I can make sure I'm using some of my time more effectively. I'm keeping social connections, maybe depending on what the type of job. So to me, it's a great option for people that the more should look into, honestly.
And I love your advice on that because again, when we talk about this, there's different options out there. People say semi, semi retirement's a little bit different, but I like your philosophy, and I think that's something that we really have to make sure we put into play if that's something we're looking at as we get a little bit older.
And that for most of us, we can do that. I think that's another thing. And maybe it's not with the company that you're currently at, but we're seeing more and more where companies that have great resources, especially from a human capital standpoint, are very willing to take 30 hours or 20 hours or 10 hours rather than nothing. Say, hey, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to put all this time in anymore, but I'm happy to keep contributing to the company, and I'm happy to keep coming a few days a week to be able to allow that to happen. We're seeing more and more freedom and flexibility to do that now, but sometimes it may take you going somewhere else. You may have to uproot from where you've been and go somewhere else, but don't overlook it, folks. Again, retirement's long. And for many people, that's fine. They enjoy it. But if you've worked for 40 years of your life, then all of a sudden get into a period of time and you live 30 years with really nothing to do but entertain yourself, a lot of people are going to struggle with the ability to figure out how to fill that time.
Now, Dave, I know we're out of time, but what is long retirement? What does that really mean?
Yeah, so if we look at average life expectancy once you get into retirement years is 84 for a male, 88 for a female. So that's average. So if we look at it and say average person now is retiring at 62, we're actually got a problem because we're retiring early, we're living longer, and thus part of the issue of why we're all running out of money. But if you look at that, CR, you're talking 20 plus years for the average person. Well, then you got people like my wife's grandmother. Now, unfortunately, she did just finally pass away, but is very, very healthy up until the last few months here. And finally, whatever it was, just said, look, this is my time to go. But she's 97. Well, if you go back and say, hey, retired 62, now I'm 97, that's 35 years of retirement. That, in theory, was probably more time. And I think she stayed home raising kids and working in the garden and doing all those things most of her life, wasn't out in a career. But that, in theory, could be as longer than many people were in their jobs.
And Dave, I really appreciate that because I talk to a lot of people who don't believe that longevity is really an issue for us. That it's not a risk. It's not something we see. They said, "Oh, we're going to retire and then go," but it's different, and we're really seeing that. And I appreciate the story about your wife's grandma, and that's hard to hear because you talked about her stories of picking plums, way just last year, or the year before, and I think that's something that we need to remember that it's going to be in there for a long time.
Yeah, it is. And it's going to continue to expand and we're going to live longer. And the other thing to know too, just because we're living longer now, again, take my wife's grandmother, extremely healthy, again, able to climb ladders, do everything clear into her age 96. But take many of us, we can live that long. We had a good friend in Enterprise. Remember when we were there, Mr. Terry, that he was on, I think he lived for 10 or 15 years, just stuck in a bed watching TV all day. Well, he didn't have anything that was going to kill him, but he didn't have the motivation to get himself out to go do the things that he needed to do because he was having some health problems. So, again, that's another thing we've got to understand that again, just because we're alive doesn't mean we're having this spectacular retirement unless we're putting things in place to allow us to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, Dave, thanks so much for spending time and a little bit over with us today. We really appreciate you coming on every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time to come over and talk about retirement.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank all those who've been with us live and those on replay. And again, if you didn't get your question answered, please go ahead and submit that on our website, retirementriskadvisors.com. And there you can also find all of the webinars we have, the podcasts we talk about today, and really find a time to subscribe. If you haven't been on our Getting Safely Through Retirement webinar, that's the one webinar I always talk about because that is our flagship webinar. And that's one you cannot miss. And I've got every date on that website for you under the events tab so you can see any time that works for you, and just make sure you get on and really apply yourself and learn these skills that Dave's talked about and learn about the different risks that are facing your retirement so you're ready. So you're not going to be at the gate of retirement, maybe a year away saying, okay, I better take action now, because that's really about doing something way ahead of time. And that's why we're here to make sure you do something. And again, Dave, what's your final parting words before we end our show?
I loved what you said, CR, that we need to get ready. It's time to prepare now. We do it during the times of good, when where our minds are sharp, when we're in a position to where we can think and through things, get ourselves educated on what we need to do, so that as those times come, that's another one we often forget. One of the challenges that many people go through as they get into retirement is mental health issues. And we talked about with Dr. Peter Lichtenberg, and all the challenges going through those issues, where all of a sudden you get to a point that the things that you once thought were fairly easy aren't easy to do anymore. So let's take care of it now. We're in a position we can do so. We can put all the pieces where they need to be, so that as those times happen, we just don't have to worry or have our families worry about what they should be doing with us in our situation.
Very well said. Well, thanks again, Dave, and everyone. We'll see you guys again next Wednesday, 11 a.m. Central Time. And again, you can catch us on all the other social media, podcast, webinars in the meantime. But until then, we'll see you then.
Bye.